anything, but that sounds like a plan. We could start.
I mean, I gotta go,
Yeah.
so I'll talk to you later.
Of course.
I will.
All right. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 10:05 a.m. I'm going to ask you all to please rise while we have the invocation and pledge of allegiance by the clerk.
Merciful Creator, your hand is open wide to satisfy the needs of every living creature. Make us thankful for your loving providence and grant that we, remembering the account that we must one day give, may be faithful stewards of your good gifts. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and please be seated. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilman Jeff Starkey,
Here.
Mayor Dan Lissette, Councilman Liam Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Ron Oakley,
Here.
Commissioner Mike Moore, Commissioner Catherine Starkey, Commissioner Mike Wells,
He's
Oh,
here.
here he is.
He's here.
He'll be here in a minute.
Okay, well, good. You helped us to make a quorum, I think, right? Is this our quorum? Yes, okay.
Chris, right there. That's the seat.
Perfect. Sorry for the interruption.
Mariano, Mayor Camille Hernandez.
Here. Thank you, and I guess we can, as they all proceed in, but we're going to continue on. We do have a quorum now. Item 5 is approval of minutes, but they're unavailable, so I guess that's continued to the next meeting. Moving on to item 6A, the Citizen Advisory Report. Do I see? Oh, we have someone new today. Hey, how are you? Nice to see you.
It's nice to be back.
Your name and address, please?
Well, my name is Marilyn Deschamps. My address is 6119 Illinois Avenue in Newport Richey. I have a prepared report from Kelly Miller, who is our chair, and she can't be here today, so I'm going to just go ahead and present it.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, board members and Chairman Hernandez. My name is Marilyn Deschamps. I represent the City of Newport Richey on the Citizens Advisory Committee. I have been asked by my peers to give this month's CAC report in the absence of Kelly Miller, our current chair. Kelly is attending the Kona Annual Appreciation Breakfast. She sends her apologies as reporting to the MPO board is one of her favorite monthly meetings and regrets having to miss. She would also like to wish you and your families a merry, happy, and safe holiday season. Our CAC meeting took place on December 6th, and it was well attended. Thank you to Mayor Massad and Commissioner Wells for filling their seats, the seats on the CAC, with two men, Jim Norwood and Eric Soyanen, who we hope will enjoy serving on the MPO CAC as much as we do. We discussed items thoroughly, asked several questions, corrected some spelling errors, and then finally recommended approval on all of the action items listed on today's agenda. We're very much looking forward to getting into the nuts and bolts of the public participation plan and the new exciting developments coming from the PCPT. Our first status update included the Vision 5456 recommended set of alternatives. Several of us on the CAC also serve on the 5456 task force, so discussion that day was good. In brief, Rob Sekru is the vice chair of the task force, and he stated that there will be a good overall view for the MPO board to select for study. The majority of the votes went towards at-grade PFI, or perpetual flow intersection alternative, for all major intersections, and then a combination of the PFI with elevated intersections. However, Kelly stated that she is not at all in favor of the alternatives selected for the corridor portion and feels that the survey sent to the task force was possibly misunderstood by some. Though she is in favor of exploring the PFI for 5441 intersection, she is only one of two who voted for elevated through the corridor. Craig Casper gave the next status report and assured us that the MPO's list of priority projects is consistent with the FDOT's tentative work program. Kelly would like to include that the Tampa Bay Next Peer Exchange Group that traveled to St. Louis met on Friday, November 17. The outcome was very positive. They took a real-time survey with questions about how to move forward and the best way to reach the people, including community engagement best practices. TampaBayNext.com is a wealth of current information. Once again, that is TampaBayNext.com. Finally, we discussed next month's upcoming election of officers. Both Kelly Miller, our chair, and Steve Hickman, our vice chair, are still eligible under our bylaws to serve for one more year term. Thank you to all of you serving on the MPO board for your dedication, for your hard work, and for making Pasco a premier county. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I know that was a prepared report, but just thought I'd ask.
One question.
Thank you.
Yep, Commissioner Mariano.
Any discussion about ever, instead of just overpasses, to actually tunneling under and building
No,
things
there
like that?
wasn't, but I recently heard about the possibility, and I would think that that would be something that if that, the infrastructure could handle such, we should look into that. I mean, it's just my opinion, but other alternatives to the expense of overpasses might be something to be considered. I'm just speaking for myself. So, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you as well. Next is the BPAC committee. I think Dr. Stovall's here. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Randy Stovall, 8235 Angela Court, Zephyr Hills, Florida. The bad news for me is I had to miss the last BPAC, but I got a report, and I think they had a very good meeting. One of the things they addressed was something that you all had requested, which was to update our bylaws so that we would have representation, two persons per commissioner. So that would involve raising the total number of BPAC members to 13 from 11. So there would be 2 per commissioner and 3 at large. So the bylaws changes had a couple other cleanups. Those are in review. And when we get done with them, then I'm sure it'll come to you. So that was a good process. Several reports we had from Chris Spees at FDOT, a good review of complete streets. And the thing that's most exciting to me, we had the draft report from the Northeast Safety Study, which you may recall has to do with what can we do to make it safer for bike riders in that part of the county where people come from all over to ride their bikes. And so that's a very good study. My understanding is the draft should get to staff before Christmas, and at some point early next year, I think it'll be presented to you. So we had a good meeting, and we look forward to a good year. So questions?
Questions for Dr. Stovall? Thank you, sir.
No, but I have a comment.
Oh, sorry.
I had lunch with Senator Simpson on Tuesday.
Good.
And we talked about the need for the overpass at Starkey and 54. So I know that came as a
Yes.
recommendation from you guys. So
Absolutely.
we're working on it.
He's going to help, huh?
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stovall.
Thank you.
With that, we move on to the action items. The first one is the TIP amendment to address the 2017 Tampa Bay TMA certification. Mr. Casper, I think you have all of these coming up, right?
Yes, I do. Good morning. Craig Casper, MPO Manager. For this first item, the MPO team is requesting that the Transportation Improvement Program be amended to include last year's list of obligated projects. This is a federal requirement, and the lack of not having this in the TIP caused a corrective action during our most recent certification. That must be corrected by December 31st, 2017, so we've got 2 weeks. With this amendment, all 3 of the corrective actions that were identified in our certification will have been addressed, and the MPO staff will send a letter to Federal Highway describing how all of the items were addressed and hopefully get the corrective actions taken off our record. Are there any questions?
Questions for Mr. Casper?
Just one question.
Commissioner
Going
Mariano.
back to BPAC, I see this, you've got a schedule now for the upcoming meetings?
Yes.
And it says locations to be determined. When will we have those locations determined?
I honestly don't know. Rick is our representative, and I will tell you that we had, some of them were determined weeks before the meeting, like 2 weeks before, this most recent year. So I think it flexes.
Would it make sense that we have a schedule, everybody can see it, and everybody can plan around that?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. That's why we try to do that. But especially with the Tri-County, it's getting everybody's.
Well, the Tri-County is one thing, but I mean, all the ones that we can control locally.
You're saying, yeah, the other ones don't have any address attached to them either, right? And it's not
Right.
just the Tri-County ones. And I know one time they were flip-flopping, weren't they, going on the west side, east
West,
side?
east,
then
and
it
we
was
still do try to do
flip-flopping
that. That is still something we aim to do. Although the last two meetings were centrally located, or relatively centrally located.
But you're saying you only get those 2 weeks, is that what I'm hearing? You're only getting it a couple of weeks prior to the meeting date?
Yep.
Commissioner, we'll get the dates and the locations pinned down well in advance and publish a list for the whole year so everybody can see and schedule their calendars.
I mean, we're doing a bylaw change, we're going to add a couple more people. Before I bring my people on, I want to be able to tell them clearly, here's what's expected of you, and here's what you need to, allot for your
We can go
travel,
back
et cetera.
and find some locations and get them out and vet them with everybody as a draft calendar.
I agree, I think that would be
Yeah.
helpful because it is time-consuming.
We're happy to
for
do
the
that.
travel parts, let alone the meeting, so.
Yep.
Any other questions on that item? If not, there is a recommended action for review and approval. It's the pleasure of the board.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, further discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is item B, the MPO General Planning Consultant, the ECOM extension.
Good morning. This item is requesting the Board of Directors approve a time-only extension of a 2012 contract that still has 3 projects outstanding on it: the Wesley Chapel Road Connections, the Withlacoochee Trail, and the Northeast Pasco Safety Study. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Pretty straightforward. Is there any questions? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board for the extension of this contract?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C, task order number MPO 18-003 for the update of public participation plan.
Good morning. This item requests approval of a task order for AECom to update the quadrennial public participation program and then develop a public involvement plan for the long-range transportation plan. It's a $59,000 contract with right now scheduled completion at the end of April. This item by federal regulation requires at least a 45-day public comment period, so that schedule could flex depending on how much involvement we get during the development of the plan.
Questions for Mr. Casper on this item? Seeing none, pleasure of the board.
Move approval?
Second.
We have a motion, we have second. Commissioner Oakley, further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item D, task order number MPO 18-01, the major update to the transit development plan.
This is asking for approval of a $190,000 contract with Tyndall Oliver to complete a major update of the 10-year transit development plan. The transit development plan is a requirement for Pasco County public transportation to be eligible to receive state transit funds. This must be completed by December 2018. The Pasco TDP will be an input into the regional TDP that TBARTA is developing. The $190,000 is a funding partnership between the Pasco MPO and Pasco Transit, $100,644 by Pasco MPO and $90,000 by Pasco Transit. Are there any questions?
Questions for Mr. Casper? Pleasure of the board.
Move approval.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item E, the amendment to the planning, the PL agreement.
This item is requesting the board approve addition of $50,781 in funds from the MPOAC, the Metropolitan Planning Organization Advisory Committee, which is a statewide organization. Their distribution plus $378,120 in closeout balance from 2015-2016. That results in a 2-year budgetary ceiling of $2,233,638. Are there any questions?
Questions for Mr. Casper on this item? You're on a roll, Mr. Casper. What's the pleasure of the
Move
board?
approval?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item F, I believe we're on, right? The letter to Florida Greenway and Trails Council.
We are requesting the board authorize the chair to sign a letter requesting that the Florida Greenways and Trails Council change the designation of the West Pasco County Regional Trail Corridor from an opportunity land trail to a priority trail. This benefits us by making the trail eligible for Sun Trail funding.
Move approval?
Second.
Under
I have a
discussion?
question before we further discussion.
Is that something that goes to the CCC? I mean, or is that, I mean, can we ourselves put that on there, or does it have to come from recommendation from the area?
No, the MPO can put that on there. Yeah.
Okay.
Further questions? We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item G.
I think
sorry.
that's not right.
I'm sorry.
Well, no,
guess the ranking.
there is a priority trail selection that the Chairs Coordinating Committee does. That is for priority for funding.
Right.
This is for the Florida Statewide Greenways and Trails Council, the greater organization, on their designation of what's a priority. So what we're getting caught in is calling us something a priority to different organizations is as I understand, totally.
Yeah, but I served for a long time on that council, and I'm just trying to remember if the funding, if it gets ranked regionally.
I think we should add it also to the CCC now.
Yeah.
That would be the next step,
That's,
yep.
yeah.
Further questions, discussion? There was a vote taken. Is that good? That was just additional discussion? Okay. Item number G, the Citizens
Did we
Advisory.
vote?
We did.
Yes.
We
Oh,
did
I thought
vote.
I was
No,
doing
you
that
had
under
discussion.
discussion. I think I was making that comment under discussion.
Okay, so let's do it again. I think we had a motion, a second. Further discussion by Commissioner Starkey. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Commissioner Starkey. Item number G, the Citizens Advisory Committee membership appointees.
This item requests the board appoint Jim Norwood to the Citizens Advisory Committee to represent Pasco County Commission District 4, and Eric Sujinin to represent the city of Port Richey. And I probably butchered his name, I'm sorry. Soyen, thank you.
I never get it right either. Just call him Eric.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. There is, for those of us that have an updated agenda, there's an item H, the interlocal agreement. What is it? It's an invoice for organizational administrative services in support of the Tampa Bay MPO CCC.
This is, I believe, our last action item, requesting that the board approve an invoice of $5,000 to the Hillsborough MPO, which is our fair share of the 6-member Chairs Coordinating Committee operating costs. These costs are a lump sum $30,000. It's a yearly
Questions?
expense.
Questions for Mr. Casper? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
We have a motion, we have a second. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Status reports, the Regional Economic Indicators presentation. Is that yourself?
No, ma'am, but I would like to introduce Dave Sobush from the Tampa Bay, I'm going to get your partner, not partnership.
Tampa Bay
Partnership, okay, Tampa Bay Partnership.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Casper. Good morning, sir. Your name and address again for the record.
Dave Sobush. I'm with the Tampa Bay Partnership located at 4300 West Cypress Street in Tampa, Florida.
Good morning.
Good morning, and I'd like to thank the board and Mr. Hughes and Mr. Casper for inviting me here today to share a little bit about our Regional Competitiveness Report. We launched this report on November 14th at a luncheon at USF, and I know that many of you were able to be there, and we appreciate it. I think what's important to state very early on is while the partnership was involved in this report, we were not the only ones, leading it. We were very pleased to be partnering with the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay as well as United Way Suncoast in this process. And that, brought, I think, a very good business, civic, and philanthropic perspective to, the findings and the recommendations that are included in the report. And that is, one of the best practices we saw when we took a look at more than 35, similar reports around the nation. dove really into Atlanta, Minneapolis, Raleigh, San Diego, and others to lift out some best practices and not try to recreate the wheel. Should also state that this is not, the first time the Tampa Bay region has endeavored into this type of benchmarking or indicators report. We had the economic market report from the early 2000s and the regional economic scorecard, which had about a 10-year cycle. Both those efforts, I don't think hit a lot of the best practices we saw, which was heavy stakeholder engagement, heavy, contributions from business, civic, and philanthropic organizations. So we felt it was time to, begin the process again. And in the overarching, theme of this, our task force, the partnership, was chaired by Chuck Sykes. I was, very thrilled and frightened that Chuck would be the chair here. Thrilled because he's absolutely the right guy to do it. Frightened because I knew I couldn't, do my usual. It's 16. That's the answer. And he likes to say in his business he manages by fact and not by conjecture, and other business principles. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So if we want to improve the community, we have to be able to measure the things that are important. And we got together a task force, many of our investors at the partnership that, were part of the process. But I think what was more important were the, close to 90 community and business organizations that participated in our stakeholder outreach. We were pleased, to work with the Pasco Economic Development Council, Smart Start, Greater Dade City Chamber of Commerce, and other organizations around the community to help understand, what the needs of the community are and how we can reflect that in the data that we're choosing to benchmark. In the report, and I thank Mr. Casper for including it in your materials, we give each of the 60 indicators of VIP treatment, where we sort of display it very clearly, provide a clear definition and source for the item, and show where the Tampa Bay region lies in terms of the comparison communities. We don't roll it up into a score or a winner, but we do provide a summary within the report, and I'll just, prefacing, some of the findings that I'll discuss in a moment, Madam Chair. There's an area in which the Tampa Bay region performs well. There's another area in which the Tampa Bay region, has some significant room for improvement. And in the rest of the areas, I'd say the technical term is fair to Midland in terms of performance in these economic competitiveness and prosperity outcomes. Those areas, we refer to them as drivers, and what we did is we, talked to the community through our stakeholder outreach, and we came up with, 60 indicators that, we felt should be included as, reflective of the economic competitiveness and prosperity of a region. And then when we kind of laid them all out on the table and we started to say, well, these are kind of related, these are kind of related, we were able to put them in these buckets of civic quality, talent, economic vitality, innovation, and infrastructure. This is the framework that we developed, and again, this is one of Chuck Sykes' requirements for serving as chair on our effort. He's very big into the strategy mapping, research done by Robert Kaplan out of Harvard, and says you got to have a framework to sort of organize your thinking around these types of processes. Economic competitiveness and prosperity don't necessarily follow a hierarchy approach, so we went with a sort of circle to represent the complex system that is a regional economy. The inner ring there with the two blue arrows that sort of feed each other represent the two customers that a region has. It's the citizens and the companies. The arrows represent the symbiotic relationship they have. Companies need citizens for workforce as well as markets for their goods and services, and citizens need companies for the products and services they provide as well as the employment opportunities therein. And sort of the idea is if you take care of those citizen and company needs, you will achieve the prosperity and economic competitiveness outcomes that we seek to achieve. You can't measure in isolation, you have to measure in context, and One of the best practices we saw is that we should have a mix of sort of peer and aspirational markets, as well as some that are within the state of Florida, so we can understand as we look at the data, is this sort of a Tampa Bay thing, or is this a larger Florida thing? So these were the 20 communities that are presented in the report. Tampa Bay in the report is the 8 counties: Citrus, Hernando, Pasco, Pinellas, Hillsborough, Polk, Manatee, and Sarasota. It matches a lot of the service territory of the 3 organizations that led the effort. It's very closely related to the T-BARTA footprint, and I think almost most importantly, it's very reflective of the designated market area for the Tampa Bay region. And halfway through the process, we got a great sort of validation, which was Amazon releasing their RFP for HQ2. And we were happy to see at that point that many of the things that we were tracking in our report as important citizen and company needs were included in the RFP that Amazon released in midsummer. So on to some of the findings. The area in which Tampa Bay is performing well is that area of economic vitality. Within the region and over the year that we looked at, 67,000 jobs created, and that was close to 3.75% job growth, and that was number 2 in the state of Florida and number 2 in our comparison communities. Also, our advanced industries are growing quickly. And the value that they bring to the economy, advanced industries in terms of advanced manufacturing, computer systems design, medical and healthcare. They had a very marked growth over that year period. Our transportation and infrastructure, something of interest, of course, to this board, is performing very well in comparison to the other communities for the population that is driving a car. Our driving time spent in congestion, again, compared to the communities we chose, ranks 3rd. Our average commutes, are 7th, so still in roughly the top 3rd there. And we're right around the middle in terms of, how many of our commuters have, hour-plus commutes. So performing, well to right in the middle in terms of some of those indicators of infrastructure. The area in which these indicators really showed some room for improvement was in the area of talent, and specifically when we take a look at the educational attainment of the population in the 8 counties. This is the population that's aged for the first 3 indicators listed on the screen. It's the population aged 25 and up, and what is the last degree that they received. Now, I'll pause right here and say that we know that associates, bachelor's, and graduate professional degrees do not represent the full spectrum of career preparation that a student can achieve. But quite frankly, certificates and professional and technical certifications, there's not a great data source that's comparable nationally. And that's one of the recommendations as we move forward is to work with some of the leading thinkers in that space that are working to better define that. But at any rate, for the data that we do have available, it's either last or second to last in terms of these communities and for associates, bachelor's, and graduate and professional degrees. And when we take a look at the share of the population aged 25 to 34 that has a bachelor's degree or higher, it also ranks fairly poorly relative to the communities in our comparison. And it's somewhat perplexing that is the case because our educational delivery systems are doing a relatively good job at producing talent. All of the universities and state colleges within the region combined, it's 11th in terms of degrees conferred to students. And we do even better when it comes to science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM degrees. So we need to do a little bit more digging. Good research sometimes asks more questions than it answers, and this is one of the ones that we'll seek to understand a little bit better over the coming year. When you think about talent as being a pipeline of talent, there's some constricting factors kind of close to the tap here. One is that we have a relatively small share of our working age population that is engaged in the labor force. We rank 20th, which in this report is last in terms of the folks aged 25 to 64 that are either employed or looking for work. If we moved to sort of the median, if we ranked 10th in the comparison group and we got to that percentage, we'd be adding about 110,000 extra workers to the labor force, which would be great. And then another area that is of some concern as we look to the future, our population age 16 to 24, we have a significant share of those folks that are neither in school nor at work. They're not gaining skills in the classroom or on the job, and sort of identifying for themselves a lifetime of lower earnings. In terms of transit, really no surprise here. It's been very well documented that the region as a whole ranks low in terms of supply and ridership. I guess the silver lining to that is we're not out of balance, ranking 20th and 20th in those indicators. And transit, serves, some needs that are very, much related to congestion and commutes. But, when you step back and take a look at, some of when you have limited options for mobility, there's limited options for participation in society. Whether that's a working mother, in Land O'Lakes being able to get, back to Newport Richey for a parent-teacher conference, or whether it's, being able to be involved in your child's youth sports league for some of those, road games on a Wednesday night. And a little bit, more central to the economic competitiveness of the region, when we have limited mobility, we have limited opportunity for our residents. And you are sort of limited to the jobs you can access either by foot or on a bicycle. And, that's not so good for this region either, because we tend to have a lot of pedestrian and cyclist fatalities compared to the other 20 communities. And, I'd stop to point out that, the 4 Florida communities in our group of 20 are all at the bottom of that list. So it is important, and you took action today on some efforts to help, make that better. And so thank you for that. The work that T-BART has done with their master plan for trails, the work FDOT does with a safety first focus, and the burgeoning efforts we see in Hillsborough County and other communities where they are, implementing solutions with a vision towards zero traffic, deaths in their communities. So where does this all go? We talked a little bit about the drivers here. What about those outcomes we talk about? And when we talk about the outcomes, what we're really, in a nutshell, talking about is the economy growing? Are people able to participate in the growth of that economy? And do folks outside of the area want to be involved in it? Are they moving to the area? Are we attractive to folks? The good news is that the economy is growing, and we ranked 3rd in our group here and tops among Florida. We had a great year for gross regional product growth. But when you take a look at that in terms of on a per capita basis, we go from sort of the top of the list to the bottom, and we are significantly lower than number 19 on that list, and we are half of the value of the first place community in that list. We tend to perform poorly in terms of poverty, with the number of youth that live in poverty, 17th out of the 20, and we're on the bottom half of the list in terms of people that are working full time, going to work every day, doing what they're supposed to be doing, but still earning poverty level wages. And this is in, the context of a historically low unemployment rate for the region, but, in context to other communities, it's not that low. So some work to be done there as well. Are we attractive to other people? And I think the answer is yes. And, as an MPO, and especially in Pasco County, one of the fastest growing counties in the Tampa Bay region, you're aware of sort of the benefits and, issues that come with growth. We continue to attract folks in terms of net migration, that is, people actually moving here and not the net effect of births and deaths. We rank 3rd, and, performing slightly below the median in terms of attracting young people to our communities. There's each of the communities, there's not any community in the 20, as you refer to the summary that is really knocking it out of the park and hitting on all cylinders. And I think that any community that got this report could say, here's an area in which we need to improve. I'll say that, we have our issues in Tampa Bay, but, this growth can be a tremendous, benefit to that, because it would be infinitely harder to solve for some of the challenges we have without, additional resources coming to the region. Something that, really differentiates this product from previous ones done in this market, and quite frankly from others we've seen done in other communities, was the sort of statistical rigor that we put, through this process. We partnered with the Muma College of Business at the University of South Florida, and they did an advanced statistical analysis. It's a little bit more than a correlation. It demonstrates some causal relationships between the indicators and the outcomes. And what they found, among other findings, is that educational attainment does matter towards your gross regional product per capita. The growth of small businesses and the number of businesses that are starting in a community, entrepreneurial activity, has a positive and statistically significant effect on gross regional product per capita. And also the availability of transit within a community has a distinct and significant effect on gross regional product per capita. So that's a good validation of some of the things that you're working on, some of the things that many groups in the community are working on, and we'll just continue to produce this report and hope to see these numbers move forward in the future. With that, Madam Chair, I'll gladly stand for any questions you or the board may have.
Thank you, sir. Questions? Commissioner Mariano.
Thank you, Dave. I greatly appreciate you coming up. Dave made this presentation to the TMA CCC's committee the other day, and I thought it'd be worthwhile for the board, and I guess Craig was already on the line doing the same thing. So I think it's a great eye-opener for us. When I look at the rail line project that they're talking about, it's something key to the transit coordination for the whole region, and everyone seems to be on board with trying to make that happen. I will say, though, the coordinating chairs, and they compared the TMA group's top priorities to the chairs committee, and it was like just completely different worlds as far as what was important. And I think it's going to be important down the road that we actually look closely together as far as working on these transportation one voices, that we get these things in line. I was happy to see that the chairs committee actually put the rail back in one of their priorities instead of just a single bullet. They elevated that up, so I think it was very telling. But like you said, Dave, a lot of this information that you're giving us leads to a lot more questions. What are your thoughts as far as the millennials, the net migration, and what can we do better to try to pull these people this way and then get our own millennials to want to stay here as opposed to moving out?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and thank you for the recap of the CCC TMA meeting, which I had to leave early, so it was useful information to get, and I'm also glad to hear it. That's one of the questions we'll take a closer look at, but what we have seen, and I just presented the ranking in there, the actual number of college-educated millennials within the Tampa Bay region, it's in here someplace. I should have dog-eared it. That's another technical term. So in Tampa Bay, it's 28% of our population age 25 to 34 has a bachelor's degree or higher. Denver, Minneapolis, St. Paul, Austin, Seattle, they're all above 44%. So it's, getting close to, 75% higher. And when you look at how those communities are performing in terms of both gross regional product per capita, the growth of their communities, they continue to attract residents as well. That's not a Muma College of Business statistical analysis. That's the Sobush eyeball test. But that to me indicates that there's some connection there. And we'll continue to dive into this data over the next year and present those findings back to the community.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Commissioner Moore.
Thanks, and I appreciate you being here too. You mentioned the TMA. Ray, I see Ray in the audience from T-BARTA. Ray, just so you know, I'm not on T-BARTA anymore. Commissioner Starkey is, if you haven't heard, so you'll be working with her now. But one of the things that happened, and Ray can even come up if he wants to. Ray, you want to come up real quick? Do you have a maybe talk briefly about some of the action items that happened the other day, and one of those being that T-BARTA is following what the legislators ask and taking the lead on transit is going to be the lead agency over all agencies when it comes to transit.
Well, regional.
Regional transit. Thank you. Regional, not local. Yes, regional transit. So maybe talk about that briefly, if you don't mind.
Well, T-BART has been charged with doing what we call a transit development plan. And so we don't trip over other planning efforts that are going on. What we need to do is finish the regional transit feasibility plan to identify the first project for the region, and then build upon that with a 10-year plan like local transit agencies have to do, but with the focus on regional. And as long as I'm there, going to keep saying this. Regional transit is not the same as local transit. I don't see what the legislature, unless they're not sure what they're doing, but if it's what they said is to focus on regional transit, this isn't like a fix for PSTA or HART. This is something we really don't have. The only regional transit we really have is T-BART's van pool program, and we do about 1,200 to 1,400 trips a day. We're up to 112 vans now, but that's pretty much it. Other than that, there's no connection, and that's only for people, commuters going to work in the same place from a distant location. It's not the general public. And the last time we did the update of our plan, one of the biggest issues was there's no regional transit. So we've been charged to do this plan, and we'll be working on that, assuming we get the appropriations that we've asked for in this legislative session and moving forward with that. Yeah. I wasn't sure if there was other things you wanted me to cover.
No, you don't need to talk about the other stuff. I just thought it was important to bring up.
So I think we have a focus now, and we're trying to keep that focus again on regional transit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we have your name for the record?
Yes.
Yes, Ray Charmonti. Thank
Just
you.
a follow-up.
Yes,
Just
sir.
a follow-up to that, and I'll be done. One of the things in your presentation you mentioned, no, Ray, you're good.
Okay.
Thanks. Was Amazon, for example. You know, with us being involved with Tampa Bay Partnership and then the Regional Planning Council and T-BARTA and all these agencies we're involved in, and all these agencies we help fund as a county, we're still, in my opinion, not to the point where we are thought of as part of the team fully. I know it's getting better. It's getting better, but we're not there just yet. And I get frustrated over this. And I'm going to give you an example. And I haven't even brought this up in a meeting yet, but we talk about Amazon. When that went down, we should have been part of that discussion from the start, and we weren't. Hillsborough County, City of Tampa, Pinellas, and St. Pete all got together and came up with a plan themselves, and the first time we hear about it is when it's in the newspapers. So what do? I get on the phone, and I talked to Mayor Buckhorn, and we had a great conversation, and he understood my frustration, how we should have been part of that conversation and being a part of that from the start. But the head of the EDC in Hillsborough County, the administrator, all these people said, no, it's done. We can't have you involved. You know, so, you know, it's great this is happening. We should have been part of that discussion from day one and been involved. We even have better sites than they do. You know, I laugh at the plan they came up with in St. Petersburg about taking out the trop and I'm sure Amazon's going to wait for that to happen, you know. But we had great sites here in Pasco County, especially along the 275 corridor. Some along the Sun Coast, some in Wesley Chapel, whether it be Wiregrass, Connected City, you know, where there's actually routes. You know, there's actually there's land set aside for light rail there. And you look at Connected City, what are they promoting in Connected City? You know, self-driving vehicles, all kinds of great stuff when it comes to transportation and transit. And that was one of the things that they were very big on, Amazon, right? They wanted to make sure that those opportunities were there. We had some of the best opportunities for that. Listen, I'm not getting on you by any means, but since that was brought up, I want to bring it up too. Very frustrating. So as we move forward, and I think all these agencies need to realize this in the other counties, we need to be involved in that conversation because we have as much or more to offer now than any of those other counties do. Hell, in Pinellas County, there's nowhere even to build anymore. You don't even have any land to build. You know.
Commissioner Moore, I'm going to jump in on that. because I agree with you 100%. And I also called, I actually called Bill Cronin to say, why aren't we part of that team? And I agree with you. We're overlooked, and I don't know if it's maybe we need to give some of our folks from the South a tour and an understanding of what's going on up here, because maybe they just don't know. And when we presented at the TMA a couple months ago, we kind of got the.
Well, we made the point then very strongly.
Yeah, we didn't really. The others presented in a much more comprehensive way, and because we were told not to, and then we just did like a one sentence thing, and so I still don't think they know exactly all the opportunities that we have up here, and it was my same frustration with the Export Alliance when it was just Hillsborough and Pinellas County, but things are changing. I do believe things are changing, and more people are aware of what's going on up here. But we have a lot of work to do with you guys, I think. And I had some questions for you on the report, and I have the hard copy. This is very hard to read, even with my readers on. I can't read some of this print, so I'm going to have full copies made for you guys if whoever wants one. You just kind of quickly went over the talent, just because I know we're here more for transportation, but you know I'm very interested in talent. And can you just touch on that real briefly? I mean, we're at the bottom of labor force and all that, and I know they used AmSkills as one of their. AmSkills was brought up in the discussion, so.
Yeah, Madam Chair, gladly, Commissioner Starkey. There are a lot of questions that come, in that talent conversation and in those talent indicators. The data that's in this report is intended to be, it's a product for the community that many organizations can use. At the Tampa Bay Partnership, we are, walking that walk, so to speak. We are convening a policy group, over the last year since we've went to a fully private organization and we've gotten out of the business of economic development and marketing. So that's been 2 years since that pivot, so to speak. We have, engaged in the task force around these indicators and our transportation policy working group. Again, managing by fact and not by conjecture, our Council of Governors, which is listed on the back page of the document, they said, let's wait and see what the results of the Regional Competitiveness Report are to see where is that, if any, other issue in which the business leaders of the region might engage and understand. So when the numbers came out, it was clear to our Council of Governors that talent was the area in which to do it. So we have convened and chartered among our group of investors a regional talent working group. We are in the very early stages of that. We have a talent demand chair in terms of Troy Taylor, who is chairman and CEO of Coca-Cola Beverages Florida, that has agreed to devote his time and energy to this topic, much the way Chuck Sykes has done for indicators and the way that Jeff Vinnick and Barry Shevlin have done for transportation, where we are going to spend some time organizing, understanding the issues related to regional talent. And then after we've sort of concluded that internal investigation, we will be reaching out into the community, to invite the community in and hopefully be part of the efforts that are moving forward. And that may be policy related, much as we've advocated for policies related to transportation over the past 2 years. It may be appropriations related, as we are beginning to do also in transportation. So it is we're a very small group of 5 people, and we choose a very select few issues, but regional talent is one of them, and you'll be hearing more from the Tampa Bay Partnership in that regard.
Great, and we invite you to come up and see our program. That's the 3-county program that we have going on with manufacturing training.
It'd be my pleasure. Thank you.
Mayor Masson, he's sitting over there.
I agreed with everything Commissioner Moore said. I'm new at this, but the Amazon project that we apparently weren't included in, what do we do? Why were we not included? And what do we do to make sure that this thing just doesn't hit us in the newspapers?
Madam Chair, thank you, Mayor. I can't speak to how different folks agreed to approach the project. I will say, I've been involved in economic development for, more than a dozen years. You don't usually see an RFP posted on the bottom of the largest consumer website. So from the very get-go, it was a different kind of process than most site location projects. But I'll refer back to, the comments I made to Commissioner Starkey, which were that, for many of its years in existence, the Tampa Bay Partnership was a public and privately funded organization. We were about 80% private dollars and 20% public dollars that focused on business development and marketing, public policy, and research, to enable both of those things. 2 years ago, our organization underwent a significant shift. We went from being a 20-person, $3.5 million organization to a 5-person, $1.5 million organization. We are 100% private dollars, and we are no longer involved with the business development and marketing activities. In an effort to kind of soft land that process, which we had played a convening role, we did organize, and Mr. Cronin from the Pasco EDC was involved, as were his peers from throughout the region, in an effort to understand where do we go from here. And scheduling became an issue for that group to get together, which I think sent a bit of a signal.
Is there anything we can do to make sure we're included, or?
Again, we weren't, involved in that process. We're no longer involved in the business development and marketing activities of the region.
Thank you, sir. Interesting, I think great discussion. You said leads to more questions and more work than answers here. But are there additional, I know in the interest of time, are there additional questions, comments?
Commissioner Morris is sitting here, but maybe he can hear us. But I want to make sure that he heard what Dave was saying, because we used to fund at the $50,000 a year rate a seat on the Governor's Council, but we don't do that anymore. We took that money and we put it into the Tampa Bay Export Alliance group that we are a part of.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Commissioner Mariano.
So, Commissioner Starkey, so is Hillsborough and Pinellas putting up the 50,000?
No public entity is doing that, except there's a little exception that President Genschaft from USF couldn't participate as the president of a publicly funded university, but she is being funded by her foundation, which kind of gets around that.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate, look forward to more from that. Item B is the Pasco County Public Transportation.
Let me know who wants the report, because I'm going to go back there and have them.
It is it's tiny.
Yeah. They did a great job on that report. Just
Good morning, all.
How many, everybody want a copy of that report in a legible fashion? Probably just should get one for everybody.
Okay. You can electronic too if you want.
Yeah.
Email will be fine.
Hello, Kurt Scheibel with Pasco County Public Transportation Director. I got some good news and some not so good news, but I'm going to give you the good news first. On the cell phone, I've been talking about it for a while. Well, our route shout test data is on the cell phone right now. If you wanted to go out and actually look at where our test data buses are going, the information's there. If you want to pull up the app, you want to make sure you get Route Shout 2.0. If you search for that, it'll come right up, PCBT, and it'll actually do some of our routes. The data's incorrect, but the system works. So we have that, and my goal is to have the real data in there by the end of this week, if not early next week. And then we'll do our testing, but we'll get it out and doing an advertising campaign so our customers can actually see this, and then we will be able to get real-time data to our customers so they know where the bus is, they know what it's going to be there, and if there happens to be an accident or the bus is running a little late, they'll know that before they even walk out the door, so they can make their own plans to make sure they're getting where they're going. The next step on this would be then moving it over to Google Transit so that everybody's phone's got Google Maps. Well, you do a thing and you hit the little transit button, our data will show up to show them exactly where the buses is and where there's going. If you've ever been to New York, you can do that there. That's the type of the idea we're looking for. And I hope to be able to get that done in the next calendar year, if not sooner. Not too much sooner, but next calendar year. The next thing we're working on is a project to incorporate our paratransit type of service or demand response service between the 3 regions. So someone makes one phone call and they get a trip from Pasco County to Hillsborough County and gets a trip back. And it's all scheduled and so forth like that. We have a meeting on Monday to start working on the funding for that, probably using some 5310 elderly and disabled funding for that. We're working with FDOT on that and making sure that we proceed forward. What's revolutionary about that is I still maintain control of my vehicles. Other people, PSTA and all the other ones will maintain control of their vehicles, but the coordination to make sure that we meet up, get the people where they need to go, back and forth, will happen. A lot of places are doing like these statewide call centers and so forth like that. The problem with that, as mentioned before, is everyone knows what the state is, but what's local, we know those needs, not just some state. We know what we need locally and how to make those trips happen, so that's what we're looking to be able to do. And then bad news kind of stuff is that we were basically, one of our funding programs was cut in half from the state of Florida. We lost from this year to last year, $165,000 was cut. What's concerning about that is that when I was asked about it, it says, well, you're near 2 major regional functions and we're lucky to get what we got.
Wait,
That's
who cut you?
FDOT. Our 53 transit corridor program went from $284,806 is this year's. Last year it was $450,000. Now, through funding, so forth, I'll be able to make it happen for this year. We think we've got a plan to make it go forward, but we're still, at the end of the day, $60,000 less.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Were all counties cut?
No, sir. No, ma'am.
So what's the reason why we were cut?
The email I got is that we're competing against 2 regional, larger urban areas, and we were lucky to what we got.
That doesn't make any sense.
You hear that?
And it's kind of surprising when someone was just up here just a second ago, they mentioned PSTA and HART, but they didn't mention PCPT. We're part of the regional program too. That's kind of the kind of things that I'm seeing is that we're moving on, but we'll make it happen on my end. But I think that is something you should be aware of, that where funding was cut.
And how much was it again? 100?
From the transit corridor program, Route 54, it went from $450,000 to $284,806, which is $165,194.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Wall.
So again, you see, and I apologize, I had to step out for a county emergency. Other counties receive this money?
No, this is a specific program to fund our Route 54. We added another bus route on.
I thought you just said the other, did I miss that?
No, we also received less money in our transit block grant funding too. That was also reduced.
Okay, but I thought, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought when I walked in, I heard you say that other.
Their funding on the same type of corridor grant money went to them, and they got their funding for the next years. Right. For our type of transit corridor grants was actually reduced.
So, stepchild.
Yeah, so why is this reduced? Can we answer that?
Is that FDOT?
It's
I'm looking at our representative from the Department of Transportation.
Maybe,
No, I wouldn't be able to answer that. I can get an answer for you from Ming Gao at the Transit Office.
Yeah, so I think we need that, and I think we need to maybe talk to our legislators.
Yes.
Because that's
the good news on that is I think I can make that funding up to some of our FTA funding and so forth.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to.
Yeah, you shouldn't have.
Yeah, and we were the only ones that, you said everyone else received
growing.
it.
We're the growing, we go back to we're the growing county.
I agree with you
We're
completely,
purposely trying to support transit on that road with sound and innovative land use decisions.
The Moon Lake route is.
We've added routes.
We've added routes. We actually added 3 more hours. We're running to 3 more hours on Route 19 now, up to 10:30, and that is slowly growing up to meet the needs of what we got.
I'm going to make a motion that we write a letter and ask for the funding to be restored.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. Further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And could I add to that, if you don't mind? Can we make sure we CC our legislators on that letter? Speaker of the House, Senate,
Yeah,
everybody, Representative Mariana, Burgess, all of them.
And did that happen a while ago, or is this just recent? I mean,
Just
because I
found
know
out
there.
about a week and a half
Okay, I
ago.
was going to say, because sometimes things happen and we hear about it way after, so, okay. But I think that's a great idea to.
Yes, ma'am. And that's.
Actually, CC Billarack is on that too. Let's get them all in there.
Senators do that.
Yeah.
U.S. Senators. Rubio Nelson.
Yeah, put them all in there.
So Pasco
That's
County,
ridiculous.
we're growing as PCPT, though. I will have to say that.
Everybody gets to keep theirs and we're cut. They're not growing like we are. Come on.
Well, I think Commissioner Starkey, I heard a comment about being the stepchild, and I think we've felt that way with several other different projects, and we really need to reverse that. Yeah, that should be the case.
Any other questions for me?
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no,
I'm sorry, Commissioner Starkey.
We've talked about, sorry, I was thinking about all
That's
that. My big mouth. 55, 54, and 75, no, Suncoast. We've talked about the bus stops there.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've asked you all to take a look at them. I want to remind you, when you're driving back to Zephyr Hills or whenever you're going to Suncoast, look at where our bus stops are located at Suncoast and 54, and it's just not cutting it for me. Because you have to stand in the turn lane in a grass. You're standing in the grass that's on an angle. There's no bench. There's just a sign for the bus stop. And so, if all things were going right, those would be big commuter stations, a park and ride or whatever. But I would think we want to encourage people using those stops. And we at the very least need a pad and a bench, but I'd like to see one of those green shelters there. But I think it's best when you, I know it may add a little time, but you pull into the parking lot there and pick them up in the parking lot and then come back out of the light when you're heading east.
Eastbound, yes, I'm familiar with the one you're looking for. As a transit type of planner, where that stop is actually, I would consider that one of the perfect spots to put it. The traffic I asked him.
How do you get there?
You mean walking around the corner on the sidewalk?
So to get to the, can someone pull that up on a map? Who's running this thing? Can you put up maps?
He's got it.
It's the one in front of the old Target.
Gotta love the magic.
Okay, so can you show them where the bus stops are? It's
Right about here.
which is the turn lane to get on the Suncoast. So how do you get there?
The problem is we would need, and I'll go back to the thing, is some type of sidewalk going from here.
You see how you get to that bus stop? You
Not
take
very
your life in your
accessible.
hands.
Now, let me tell you the good news for that, ma'am. Right now, we have a new planner that's been working, and this is one of the projects that I asked him to look at, is not just this bus stop, but all my bus stops. What is the ADA accessibility for all my bus stops? And this may be before the bus stop moved around the corner, because it used to be down the corner by the old
I
Target.
think it's down further, right? Is he looking for the bus stop?
No, it was before that.
It's just past that
Yeah.
sign there. We're looking at.
Show him the bus stop on the other side.
The bus stop on the other side is actually there. We're looking at the exact thing that you're looking at, ma'am, is how are people getting to our bus stops? And the good news is, I've already got money budgeted for it. I just need to get the contracts going and identify those stops that meet our ADA requirements. And he's about 2/3 of the way through all 697,000, stops that we've got. We've got quite a few of them. And he owes me a report after the beginning of the year. And once that happens, this would be a prime example of where we do need a sidewalk around. Now,
Showing the bus stop?
no, what's the date of the picture is 2/16, and we changed it after that, if I'm not mistaken. So you're absolutely correct. We are looking at that exact same thing right now. In fact, that was my number one project for him when he walked in the door was, can our folks get to our bus stops? Plain and simple. Can they get to it without putting them in danger of being hit by somebody else? And then are our bus stops in the optimal location, both safety-wise for when they are stopped there for the on and off, and for the customers, getting to and where they need to go to. So we are looking at that right now, and if you want to, I can give you an update.
I think we would all like to see what the plan is for that.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a county employee who asked to stay anonymous, whose wife rides this to get to work in Tampa. and it's got to drop her off on the side of the street in the rain, in the dark. It's not, it's,
No
good.
you know, he's very worried.
Safe at all.
Yeah.
Councilman
Very,
Starkey.
very worried.
Were you done, Commissioner Starkey? I know Councilman
that's
Starkey
it.
had a comment.
Just a quick question regarding our fleet. How old are our oldest buses? The reason I ask, the bus that services downtown Newport Richey, every time it stops and goes, a huge black plume of smoke just comes flying out. The whole back of the bus is covered with black diesel smoke. You can hardly read the advertisement. It's just not very good a reflection of our county and our public transit system, in my opinion.
I agree with you, sir. Our oldest ones are our Bluebird buses that we retired in February.
Perfect.
I don't know if you looked at them quite recently, but we hired a new gentleman that's all he does is clean the buses now, cleans them inside and out, and there's been a drastic improvement. I've been getting compliments on our buses. There is one bus that's really old. It's one of the oldest in the fleet that unfortunately unfortunately the grime to get it off of there was taking off the paint.
Yeah. Well,
so I actually talked with our contractor on that, and I said, look, it just looks bad. Is there any way I'll pay for it?
Yeah. Well,
just
that
take
looks
it
bad,
off
but
and put a new one on.
The big black plume of smoke every time it hits the gas looks even worse.
Unfortunately, that's
just bring to your attention.
I'm one of my very much aware of things. That one is number one on my list to retire. It is beyond useful life, and I can retire it. It just takes time to build the buses, unfortunately. And but we should get 5 new buses in February. And my whole staff is just counting down the days for that. And my team is really trying to, especially the drivers, because it's hard to drive some of those buses. And because of technology from 2002, 2005 has changed. And the newer stuff is a lot nicer. So, also the seats are a lot better because, as you well know, seats get old and they're in them a long time.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Sir, additional questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes. Sir.
And Councilman Starkey, I'm sure that was probably an unwrapped bus?
I'm sorry?
No, it was wrapped, sir. If it's the one he's talking about, it's the PTC bus, if I'm not mistaken. I've already talked to Blackjack, and she said she was going to take that back off and put a new one on, and I said I'd pay for it. Just because there's just no way to get the grime off of it. I'm just tearing off her stuff, and I'm actually down to bare metal in some of the places, and not a good look. Not a good look.
I know up and down Little Road and elsewhere along, it's better on 19 now with the right turn lanes, but these buses have to pull on the side of the road, so they're blocking traffic as they're picking people up and down. So it's not unusual to even see what we're seeing here. Up and down Little Road, they're literally on the road blocking a lane while they're getting people off and on. Just a suggestion, though, I note is looking at the pictures. On those 2 bus stops right there, the one to the south where the Target is, maybe it's good to have a little sidewalk coming from one of the end commercial place right there.
That's exactly what we're looking at doing.
Coming right across, and then on the other side where the trail is, to come right across to.
$1 something or whatever is the cost per yard. Yeah, we're looking at doing exactly what you're talking about. Just putting just a simple sidewalk to the bus stop, that's gold. Because then you moved away, maybe even a small curb and then you'll need a small sidewalk to the road so that if there's someone's wheeling around there, we drop the ramp and they can roll on without having to go across the grass.
All right, so as well as on the retail side on the southern part, to connect the retail directly out to 54, but then on the other way, just bringing that sidewalk and just extending that over, because anybody coming from the other side of the lot or from the residential can get there easy too. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We're looking at all those options.
All right.
And as you well know, it all comes down to how much we can, once I get everything together, if I need more, I'll see what I can do out of my grants, and if I have to, I'll do a business proposal. We'll move forward.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next item is the MPO comments on the tentative work plan program.
Good morning, Craig Casper, MPO manager. So I wanted to update you on the letter that we sent to FDOT based on the comments we received on their work program. I want to point out item number 2, where the National Highway System and other highly traveled corridors in Pasco County would benefit significantly from ITS technology, especially based on yesterday's meeting. We had a kickoff meeting around the region for the smart cities and updating the regional ITS architecture, which is vehicle to infrastructure, infrastructure to infrastructure, and vehicle-to-vehicle communication so that traffic signals can, in the future, can talk to vehicles and vehicles talk to the traffic signals, is laying the groundwork. Getting all the fiber run for that is going to jump in priority. So that's one of the things that we put in the comments that we want to look at that. Also, real quick, just to follow up on the sidewalk comment, right now we have an intern in our office who is going through and doing an inventory of all the sidewalks in the county, and she is starting with the bus routes so that people can actually walk to the bus and get to the buses. So that's just an FYI. We're doing that because we didn't have an inventory of where sidewalks are in the county yet. So,
Thank you, sir.
Questions?
Question? No, seeing none. Moving on to item D, the socioeconomic data.
This is an information item. You'll be seeing it as an action item either in January or February. We are prepping for the next long-range plan update, and in doing so, we're working collaboratively, partnering with Pinellas and Hillsborough counties on how we develop our next long-range plan. And so what we have agreed is the BBR data from the state, not everybody was enamored of its data, and so we sought a neutral party, in this case Woods & Pool, to help us with the forecast. Woods & Pool is an internationally renowned socioeconomic forecasting company, and so we are looking at using their data as a neutral decider for our socioeconomic control totals, which is for population and jobs. I want to point out that the 2040 plan for Pasco County that we adopted a couple years ago had 900,000 by 2040. So we are seeing a significant drop in that. The previous forecast used the highest growth number for Pasco County and then rounded up based on a trend of building permits. So that we are going to have a lower number. However, in the near future, 2025, our number before was about just under 500,000, and now we're looking at almost 600,000. So what the Woods & Pool number does is it grows us faster in the short term, and then the long term, it slows us down. Hillsborough doesn't believe that they'll have 2 million by 2040, and so what we're likely to do in partnering with them is take some of the excess from Hillsborough and move that in. We just don't know exactly what that's going to be right now. So like I said, you'll be seeing that as an action item later. Also, in doing so, when we do these forecasts, the only thing we know for sure about them is they're wrong. We don't know how much they're wrong or which direction. The truth is probably going to be somewhere between the 754 and 900. But so what we're going to do in partner with Hillsborough and Pinellas is develop 3 different scenarios. We're calling them tentatively trend and technology, belt and boulevard, and transitory development. And they sort of work out into trend, what's gone on in the past, mixed with what will happen with some of the autonomous cars and other things. Belt and boulevard, that is the alternative. You saw the presentation on turning the interstate into a boulevard. So that option will be exploring that potential future. And then transitory development is creating dense transit villages like we're planning, and looking at some of the rail corridors and other things and what happens to population when we do that. So again, you'll be seeing that in the near future.
Increasing FAR.
Questions? Good. All right. I look forward to some additional info. And then last item on the update is the Vision 5456.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, sir.
If I could I wanted to just interject. If you haven't noticed, we have an extraordinary talent in our new Director of Transportation. I've been watching him working with the other county MPOs, and one of the things that we are getting a refreshing new look at, and I think it's going to help us as we compete in the region to get more authority in the discussion of policy. Craig is very good at data and statistics, and he's actually calling into question a number of the assumptions that the Pinellas and the Hillsborough County technical staff are involved with and have just been assuming as the way business should be done going into the past. And what you're seeing a little bit of here is what will have direct and immediate effect on us in terms of short-term benefit, in terms of competing for more dollars. But in the long run, as we really genuinely grow at a greater rate than the other parts of our region, it's how we capture the advanced attention and dollars in the assumptions for future dollars and distribution. So I don't want to overlook it because it is geek stuff. I mean, it's hard to listen to, but he's really drilled in and has come up with some amazing changes already and put us in a much better position in these debates.
Thank you for pointing it out, Mr. Hughes.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
You know, in some of this TMA group, where they have 3 county commissioners or councilmen from each county show up at these meetings, they're 100% attended by Pinellas and Hillsborough as well. We've never had more than 2 people there. So if you want to talk about having a voice, talking about this thing there, someone needs to come in addition to Catherine and I to show up at these meetings, because it tips the scales when you have heavy representation. And DOT is at the table every time, so they see our participation.
The chair.
Oh, good point. And I think it's when you have a seat at the table and you're there and they're seeing you, it definitely has an impact and makes a difference. So I do. Who are?
Well, I think we talked about that before. It's difficult. It was with the schedules that some of us have because of other committees we have on Fridays.
Maybe that changed now.
You know, so.
Well, it's a good point, though, I think so. Yeah, and I don't know if we have any alternate reps.
And I can't make everyone, and Jack can't make everyone, so a lot of times we have one voice. And there's all the cities, all the counties.
Can we send
all their
alternate reps?
Can we have a city person come on in?
Yeah, can we have
I did it, I think, 2 years ago, and my schedule just got pretty rough, but I have a really good staff right now, so I could maybe entertain the possibility. It's 1 Friday a month down across from International Mall still. If you could.
No, it's close. It's Rocky Point.
Rocky Point, no. Yeah, if you could send me an email with the meeting schedules for the upcoming year, I'll see if I can try to attend with Commissioner Starkey and Commissioner Mariano.
One of the things I learned is if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, so.
Okay.
And maybe have an alternate or two.
Well, and I think that was where I was going, is to have alternates, that if we can't be there, so maybe, have a second alternate as well, and somebody, so again, we are there and our presence is there and we can bring back the information, but I think, to have.
MPO chair for Pasco County as an alternate.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to, no, I know, actually, it's a wealth of information. I attended the TMA CCC, and I told Craig, I left there going, wow, I learned a ton, plus, again, it's being a seat at the table, so I'll be happy to be another name on there if schedules don't allow some to attend, so that we have a presence. I think that is very important, so I'll be willing to be there, or as a name on the list.
You got 2 tonight.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you, though, for bringing that up. Okay, where are we at? We're at E?
Yes. So in January 11th, you will be seeing a request for formal recommendation on the Vision 54. You heard a little bit about it during the CAC report. We have 2 sets of recommendations you'll be deciding on. One for the whole corridor based on a little road analysis, and then one specifically for the 5441 intersection. We have a really good spectrum of options that are going to be recommended to you through the committees and from the task force that actually made the recommendation, including overpasses at major intersections, transit in its own right-of-way, a fancy new intersection design that's innovative. So you'll be seeing that in January for formal recommendation. And then from there, it'll go to FDOT for their PD&E study on the 5441 intersection specifically to figure out how to fix that, because it's not a good intersection and it's going to get worse. So we need to get something done there as fast as we can.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
I really was disappointed we didn't get to see what they had voted on, what the recommendations were, even at this meeting here, even if it's something for you guys to schedule for later on. But one of the things I mentioned to Marilyn Deschamps when she spoke for the CAC report was, did anybody look at going underground? And those of you who was out to any of those meetings with the Pasco fiasco, talking about the elevated roadway and the toll roads and all the objections that were there. I mean, they mounted, I think, 2,500 people to get active to oppose that thing every step of the way, and it got squashed down. To go back and do the same exact thing without looking at what could be a better alternative, going underground, I think we're just making a big mistake, just to keep on pushing it down the road. So I don't know what it takes to go look at what Miami-Dade with, where they have a rail line and a tunnel going underneath, is what I understand. Why we aren't looking to go underground when it would take away probably all the objections? Any reason we haven't looked at that? And this is an open question to you as well as our DOT representative.
I can speculate on that. Having worked in areas with a high groundwater table, is the maintenance, what happens when you run into a lot higher probability in storms, or even with a big rain, or the water will flood, and you have the pumps you need to run to keep a underpass like that operational is pretty prohibitive, and engineering challenging. But I honestly, in this case, I don't know specifically here.
Are you referring just to that intersection? Just
I'm
41?
saying you could probably do it on every interchange going through. I mean, from Collier to, could be even Little Road down the road, as well as 41. And then 41 could save us a lot of grief if we can go under that and not have to move that rail line, elevating up and down. So, I mean, if they can do it Miami-Dade, I think they have a high water table.
They're going to have a high water table too.
Maybe
so.
someone can verify that. Yep. But, I mean, around, Boston, D.C., they got tunnels going underwater everywhere. Somehow they found a way to keep the water out. I got to think we can probably, if we look at it a little bit harder, maybe it's a good alternative to take a look at.
I just clarify something, Commissioner Mariano. I want to be clear that the solution that Pasco Fiasco objected to did not get moved forward by the committee. I want to clear up that misperception. What got moved forward by the committee was at-grade express lanes that stay at grade. They just elevate at the major intersections. The fully elevated one did not get moved forward. In fact, the Pasco Fiasco representative on the committee voted for the one that was at grade, an at-grade toll facility.
Well, at grade elevated,
Yeah, at grade through most of the quarter, but it gets elevated
like
at major intersections.
19,
Yes.
whether or not it's the walls or the piers.
I'm just telling you what got moved forward was not the prior fully elevated facility did not get moved forward by this task force.
Okay, and what I'm telling you is I've seen other places that have done it where they build bridges down low instead of going up above. And I think it's something we should go take a look at.
You mean tunnel?
Tunnels.
Yeah.
Well, we can talk about that when it comes to the MPO. I didn't want you to think, you made the statement that the project that was objected to by all the folks from Pasco Fiasco got moved forward, and it did not. I want to be clear about that.
No, I didn't say that. Matter of fact, I actually made the comment where I don't even see the reports here where the recommendations were, which I think this board should have actually could look at, so we can make some comments while they go before recommendations. But now we're going to look at it with the recommendations in place.
Well, you can always change that recommendation.
I
mean,
understand.
you don't have to follow what they recommended. I didn't want you to think that they didn't want the MPO or the public to think they had recommended what was previously rejected from the unsolicited bid.
My point to the group was if they don't like it, they're going to get in opposition. So to actually to fully verse and fully vet every single alternative, such as going under the road, might be a good way to go look at it before we bring this back before us. But anyway, that.
I want to comment on that.
But I think we probably need DOT to comment on the feasibility of going underground. Okay, so we'll have them address that.
Commissioner Starkey, you might want to, okay, good.
Well, on the underground tunnel, we actually have a resource here. Hubertus Muehlhauser, who's the CEO of WellBuilt, his family business for generations is tunneling. They built the tunnel. They just built the longest tunnel in the world, I think between France and Switzerland, that just opened up. So,
They live here?
and he's looking at working with Mr. Musk and others in the new tunneling ideas. So we have a great resource here. He's on a plane tomorrow, heading home, but happy to hook you up with him.
That would be good.
And FDOT.
Well, at least for a conversation or, yes, to.
So I will get in touch with FDOT to find out if they did look at underground sections, and if not, why not? So. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out also, although we do have good recommendations, they were not unanimous recommendations. Vote was 7-6 from the committee, so not everybody was completely enamored of the options that are coming forward.
Thank you, sir.
Never will.
I think there's only one other item, and that is our meeting schedule, where you moved the August meeting and canceled the July, correct? That's
Correct.
okay.
And just real quick, under some other business also, the Cody River underpass we talked about in September. I have initial preliminary draft scope we want to take back, talk with the municipalities about that, explore that a little bit better so we can figure out exactly what kind of funding request we need to make.
And Craig, real quick on that, you and I spoke for the meeting. I recommended Craig that he meet with our city manager, maybe the city manager of Port Richey, and get their input on kind of what design we're looking at, and maybe even meet with someone like Eric Soyman back there. He owns a business in that waterfront district. He's now on the Citizens Advisory Committee. He might be a good person to invite to the meeting as well.
Okay, that'd be great.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
On the schedule, we have the December 13th meeting. Now, today we had the Kona meeting today, which is on the same day as that. Whether we go the week before was probably the best way to go, or even move it to 11 o'clock a.m. instead of 10 a.m.?
Yeah, late, 10:30, even 10:30.
We could,
10:30, 11?
I'd say be 11 to be safe.
11 be
Give us
safe.
time to talk to people later on, whatever. So let's move that to 11 o'clock, and I think it'd be
On
fine.
the 13th.
Then you guys can try to pack the agenda, the meeting before and the meeting after too.
Yeah, exactly.
Are we okay with everything else there? They did move, they canceled, I said the July, and then they moved the August meeting as requested. Everything else is good? All right, thank you for that.
Do I need a motion for that, or to move to 11?
I guess let's have a motion, make it official
All right,
to
so
move that.
let me make a motion to take the December 13th meeting from 10 o'clock a.m. to 11 o'clock a.m.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for that. Am I missing anybody? Okay.
one last announcement, so related. Rick Hartman, our bicycle planner, tomorrow is his last day. I was going to have him talk here, but he is upstairs finishing 2 applications for funding that must go out today. And so, but I just thought I'd let you know that we will be hiring a new planner for that position.
Thank you, sir.
We get as much out of our people as we can.
Sounds that way. Last thing we is public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to address the MPO board at this time?
Madam Chair?
Yes,
If
sir.
I could, I thought Craig was going to bring it up before he left, about that underpass. Catherine?
Bring up what? No. What are you bringing up? I'm sorry?
It's the Cody River, we're going to be meeting with the city managers to refine that. The scope, is that?
pretty much for everyone to see if you want to-
Under 19 and.
One thing I brought up to Craig is, I mentioned last MPO meeting to look into maybe acquiring land to park golf carts right at the base of Bailey Avenue there, but I think it'd be a lot more feasible if we just made the pathway wide enough so a golf cart can get underneath. It makes a lot more sense, so.
So we'll be meeting with the 2 city managers to refine the scope there, figure out exactly what we're talking about so we can get a better cost estimate and what the scope is so that we can start the application process.
I think the mayor would probably like to be in there, too.
Where do we stand currently? Are we at 18 still, or have we moved it up?
Or, sorry.
Under 19.
Oh, priority, yep, no, it is still at the same priority, 18th, at what the prior, or 13th.
13 it was.
Manny has it is still at the same priority that it was. It hasn't, there hasn't been a vote.
Would it be inappropriate to make a motion to move it up?
Well, we had that.
We would need to go through the process to,
Do that, right? It shifts every time we do that, we need to have that list in front of us,
And
I
we're
think,
looking-
to.
Yeah, so in order to move it up, everything else will come down,
Like
so.
Commissioner Wells said, too, we're looking at some alternative funding sources.
Yes.
So.
Yep, and that's what we need to, we're going to nail down the scope, exactly what we're talking about, so that we then can figure out what funding sources fit it. So as examples for what Rick's working on for some projects right now, we're asking for one set of funding sources for the paths, and then the bridge will be a separate set of funding source because it's a bigger cost. So we may take a similar approach with this underpass. We just need to know exactly what we're asking for. And connecting this underpass to some of the other trails, there's not enough right-of-way width to add the separate trail, so we're looking at a sharrow along Grand Avenue, and making that a formal shared path, things like that we need to do to make sure we're connecting to the regional system, so.
Can we have that on the agenda next time?
Totally.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Starkey?
I also, during my lunch with Senator Simpson, brought up the problem with the Orange Belt Trail that is on the state opportunity map and is a high recommendation on the CCC. And that is the trail that is, the Orange Belt line, if you remember, is the Pinellas Trail through Pinellas County, and we have it on our map that going from Trinity to Dade City to hooking with the Withlacoochee State Trail. And parts of it are already built. We're going to be using this part that's built in Trinity already. Bexley has built their part. And I've been working with FDOT to try and get a solution to get under the Suncoast Expressway. And we thought we had a solution with the Turnpike Authority, but it went away. And so working with Senator Simpson on getting a meeting with FDOT, and maybe when we're in Tallahassee with the Secretary, to try and find the solution, which Bexley is willing to pay for, Newland Communities, which is to go, their proposal is to go under the where there's a critter crossing, there's a slough, and my understanding is the Suncoast, the Turnpike Authority's objections are, one, at the grade level right now, it's like 7'6", and they really want 8 feet. If you're riding a bike through there, but they've come up with solutions where you have to get off your bike and walk it, or they also have come up with a tunnel, like to build a trough and pump out the water to get under the turnpike at that place. And this is temporary until we get the Tower Road flyover. And the gentleman from the Suncoast, from the Turnpike Authority that was here at the meeting here with Jim Woods from Tallahassee and others, even suggested that FDOT look at donating us an easement, so we have all the liability until that flyover is built. But that has also become stuck. So we need to keep moving this forward, because right now there is no safe way to get from one side of the Suncoast to the other. And the guys who are running True, their pilots want to safely get from their offices there to the other side. I'm sure Metla Toledo is. We've got a multi-use apartment complex coming in there that's going to be filled with, I think, high-earning executives, young executives that are going to be working at Metler and True, and the other businesses that are coming there, and they are cyclists. We've got Bexley and all that development coming, and they cannot get to the Suncoast Trail. When the road was widened under the Suncoast at 54, the path was taken out, and there's a very narrow piece of concrete that you have to maneuver with all the semis and everything else that's going on under there. So we're continuing to look for a solution to connect the trails there until the Tower Road flyovers.
Yep. And I have a commitment from the authority to meet with us to discuss that underneath option. We just haven't come to a schedule. We need to.
All right, good. Senator Simpson would like to be involved in that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There's all this cold air.